Right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this reconvening of the plenary session. And usually we call it a winding up session, but what normally happens, it becomes a winding down session. The numbers are reducing, but it is a very important session because it would involve the reports from the various chairs of the various breakout sessions to give you a sense of what they discuss and what they've concluded, because these things will then be captured in a final report that we will make in the next couple of months. So maybe if 5 minutes each, if that's sufficient, then we'll start with Datuk Sri Nazir Razak, Chairman of CIMB Group for Financial Services and Capital Markets.
Thank you, Chairman. We had a very good session today. We had, of course, Minister of State for Finance, Josephine Yeo, Piyush Gupta from DBS, Bong Kong Sing from BPI, and Mr. Yu Tan from KDZ in Myanmar, and a presentation from Accenture. Essentially, the presentation from Accenture was around this whole challenge of SME financing, but they focus specifically on the potential of crowdfunding or peer-to-peer funding as a means to improve access for SMEs. I referenced what Tan Sri Munir said this morning about the proposal to set up a SME growth bank for ASEAN as an alternative to that. Basically, neither had great reception from the audience. The bankers, probably a little bit self-serving, but the bankers felt that what's more in need is to improve the ability of banks to access SMEs or review credit history of SMEs rather than take on the risk of setting up a sort of semi-government sponsored new bank across ASEAN with all the attendant risks. And also that on crowdfunding, perhaps it's new and the immediate focus should be on looking at it from a pure national standpoint rather than trying to use it for ASEAN as a whole. We also discussed the general update on ASEAN integration in financial services. And basically, Piyush's view, which we all shared, was that we're frustrated by the pace of integration. The view is that the trading link, the collective investment schemes, etc., are there, but certainly by this stage, we should have gotten much further, and we're a bit concerned about the momentum, whether it's moving fast enough in any case. Also the view that it's not sufficiently publicized, so people don't really appreciate what's happening there. There was a positive remark about the recent meeting of all central banks and big banks across ASEAN. I thought that was actually a very, very good session, which I attended in KL, and we're hoping that can actually be a frequent event so that we can have a platform to air our views about the challenges of cross-border banking in ASEAN. There was a view from the audience, important one again, about the implications of Indonesia's kind of lukewarmness towards ASEAN. And I think finally, there was consensus that this expert group that ABC has been pushing is desperately needed. And hopefully we felt that rather than channeling our efforts to too many things, we should really zero in and try and push the creation of this expert group. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sri Nazir. We'll move on to the next panelist, Ms. Candice Ong, Managing Director of Zalora Southeast Asia, on retail.
Thank you,
Candice.
Chairman. And thank you, organizers, for putting this event together. We had an interesting discussion and presentations today from members from the public sector as well as private, and good feedback from the floor as well. We all recognize that the potential of the market in Southeast Asia is huge, but largely untapped due to fragmentations in the market. And there are various ways and various arenas whereby more cohesion could be done and more partnerships could be done across businesses to make scalability across the region much better. In terms of reducing fragmentation, as well as understanding that there has been tremendous technological improvements in changing the way consumers now consume both content as well as procure goods, that it's necessary for retail to evolve in innovation in that space as well. And e-commerce has been a hot topic for a few years now, and that also has moved on to m-commerce, whereby a lot of consumers are actually spending a lot of time on their smartphone devices, and this is due to the smartphone penetration across markets. This is especially seen in developing ones, in second, third tier cities, where there's actually less access to goods. There was also mentioned that the private sector could be better consulted to increase efficiency in legislation as well as policies, and aside from just reduction of trade tariffs, processes and approvals should be reconsidered to increase trade efficiency for businesses cross-border and as well as internally. Southeast Asia should learn to do business better with each other for that scale and for that ability to compete in today's world. Last but one good point brought up by the floor as well is that fulfillment, and also mentioned by the previous presenter, fulfillment on the B2C part is still lacking in terms of, I guess, innovation as well as scalability and quality of service. And that's an area that ASEAN could look to improve in this ecosystem too. There was mentioned as well that there could be financial incentives to reduce risk in retail and innovation, and that the Singapore government is actually executing on this already, whereby grants are provided to be given to companies with specific retail investments. Because in Southeast Asia as well, a lot of businesses are operating on distribution or distributor type model, there could be better transfer of technical knowledge from the principal over here, but some distributors are unwilling or, I guess, risk averse to taking on these technologies due to the risk, and these financial incentives could really help, I guess, the technical transfer of knowledge as well as for local distributors to innovate and try more new technologies. A panelist from Japan also mentioned that big data could be used to improve efficiency in many ways that we do things in ASEAN. Locally, in terms of education, there is mentioned that there's strong mindsets that professional services is the way to go for today's young. That needs to shift a little bit more to vocational opportunities as well, and that innovation and technology are good as well as respectable jobs out there. There could be more training and opportunities given to people in colleges as well as people in professional services to learn a little bit more about innovation in technology or even innovation in retail. Last but not least, governments could also foster greater partnerships between companies like startups and established businesses for companies to move forward in innovating and seek solutions. And this is, I guess, very similar to what the Accenture presentation was about, in the sense that there doesn't need to always be a need to innovate and build systems from the ground up, but really you can tap on existing technologies and startups who can provide the solutions.
Thank you very much indeed, Candice. Actually, this year is the first time the ABC Forum is covering tourism. And it'd be interesting to hear, what kinds of ideas have emerged from Eileen Clemente, President of the ASEAN Tourism Association.
Thank you very much. Well, we came in a little confused, and I think we came out more confused. No, but seriously, the LTB initiative has already discussed on 11 sectors, and some of those touched things that are elements also of tourism. So it's more of a resonance of what has already been discussed, particularly on single visa, connectivity, infrastructure, and also identity. Even with that, we asked for validation, how many knew that there was even an ASEAN tourism strategic plan from 2011 to 2015, for that which we all said nobody knew anything about it. So the efforts, if any, were really, the efforts, if any, from the private sector is almost nil. So it was really an effort more from the NTO. So that provoked the question of how much participation should the private sector have. This morning it was mentioned that the private sector should be very much part of the implementation, but I did emphasize that we should be part of the planning before even the implementation. So that's where we were, and we were stuck with one particular question because I threw out two words out there. One is ASEAN, and the other one is Southeast Asia. So even that is a contentious issue of how we look at ourselves, if we are ASEAN or are we Southeast Asia, as others would see us, and how we see us from within the ASEAN countries. Apart from that, of course, we need to put efforts also on, again, the single visa. And if it cannot be done through government, how can we synthetically find the solution in the private sector to complement what is present currently in the different ASEAN countries? It's very difficult for us to really put tourism in one as a specific sector because it covers a spectrum. It's going to be very challenging. So we took it as a point of a baseline, the discussion a while ago, more as a baseline, and for the rest to continue the discussion even after that. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe there was some discussion about on an ASEAN tourism brand. Where did it go?
Because I did ask, is anyone aware that there is the branding Southeast Asia Feel the Warmth? And nobody knew about it. I knew about it only last year. So even that in itself means that the efforts didn't come from the private sector, or they were not a part of it, such that there's also no buy-in on that particular promotion. So how could we get anywhere if we don't even know the marketing plan for the entire branding for ASEAN?
All right, thank you. I mean, Irene Omar is the chief executive of AirAsia Berhad, and she was the chair for the civil aviation panel. Please, Irene.
Thank you. We had a really lively discussion, really, and it all evolves around the fact that ASEAN single aviation market is actually, we have still very little progress. What we have is really a partial open skies. We discussed that the economic liberalization must be followed by investments in infrastructure and human capital, and technical or regulatory harmonization must take place. The current issues are lack of common standards, lack of mobility of skilled professionals, onerous ownership rules for airlines, and infrastructure deficiency that has led to slots constraints. Hence, we felt that the barriers to the integration of air transportation in ASEAN can be categorized into, number one, technical integration, and number two, economic integration. So under the technical integration, ASEAN needs harmonization of standards across the region. And we felt that a starting point was to have common technical standards that may be the low-hanging fruits that we can achieve. And we identified two of them. One is common certification for pilot mobility, and this includes recognition of common certificates, permits, and licenses. Common standards of ramp inspections. This includes universal recognition in the region of safety checks and conducted by any one ASEAN state. We also question whether we're ready for a common ASEAN regulator. A common ASEAN regulator, we felt, will put emphasis on safety agenda, for example. But all airlines, regardless of commercial classification, whether it's a legacy carrier or a low-cost carrier, and ASEAN states, we felt need to come together for this. On economic integration, restrictions remain. We need to improve market accessibility. We have to go beyond the fifth freedom of traffic rights. Not all ASEAN states also have adopted the protocols for the establishment of the ASEAN single aviation market. In addition, different states have different understanding and definition of open skies and its provision. Slot constraints and congestion is one of the deficiency under economic integration, ownership and control as well, basically, because we felt that we need this in order to have a seamless regional operations that promote efficiency. We also felt that ASEAN common visa is also essential for the growth of the industry as well. We also need to relook at LCCs, low-cost carriers, because there was a discussion that we felt LCCs have transformed aviation in ASEAN, and governments need to recognize that LCCs are the growth engine of ASEAN aviation, because what we have seen policies are still 40-year-old policies that doesn't recognize the dynamism of LCC that has created in this industry. So in conclusion, we felt the progress has been slow on many fronts. The public and private sector need to work together to support ASEAN open skies and ASEAN single aviation market. And perhaps the fastest way is to get all airlines to push for the establishment for a common ASEAN regulator for a start.
Yes, excellent, thank you. I think there were some proposals that were made as a consequence of some tragedies that occurred that included common ASEAN training for air traffic controllers and pilots. Were those things discussed as well?
Yes, they were discussed because that's part of the whole harmonization exercise.
Okay, under the regulator.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you so much, Irene, spending so much time with us today. And our next chairperson is Shanti Shamdasani, who is going to report to us on healthcare. Shanti, please.
Thank you. So our healthcare panel discussion was very colorful and I could say very healthy discussions we had. We had a panel consisting of Nurses Association, medical, hospital, and representative from the Japanese Ministry of Trade. Basically, we agreed on the fact that there's a silent cry in not just Southeast Asia, but in the world for people to be healthy. That's one. Second one is we do agree that healthcare should be seen with two categories. The first is preventive, and the second one is curative. With regards to preventive, we have seen quite a lot of improvement in this area with the Fitbits, the wristwatches, the Nike, basically bands to help you monitor your health. The supplements that you see, which is growing in the shelf, there's a lot of bicycling group, there's a lot of outdoor activities, marathon running, triathlon, and all that. So that awareness is there, and I think that is something which is good. It has come to Asia, to Southeast Asia, and that will help the healthcare industry. The problem, though, is within the curative part. Now, what happens if somebody falls sick and sees a doctor? And this is where we see a bit of quite a bit of a infrastructure problem and fundamental problem. The problem that we currently have is there's a growing need of healthcare facilities in the region. There's governments have tried their best to get private sector involved. Indonesia, for instance, in the last 3 years have opened 58 hospitals. Governments in Vietnam have allowed private sector to come in and put in their investments. So we see efforts from the government side to help manage this problem. But the deeper underlying root problem, which we also discuss, is that we have a very serious infrastructure problem related to skilled labor. you have hospitals, you have clinics, you have infrastructure, but you do not have enough nurses and enough doctors. Even if you take ASEAN, Southeast Asia as a group, you have Malaysia, which is producing surplus of doctors. You have Philippines producing surplus of nurses. Then you come across a problem again in terms of what would incentivize them to practice or to work in Myanmar, for instance, in terms of salary, language barriers, and all that. Given the assumption that the government would allow free flow of skilled labor to get into this. So this is another problem which we see we need to put our efforts, put our serious thoughts moving forward in terms of how we manage this problem. We also talked about harmonization standards of medical devices, pharmaceutical products, cosmetics, and we feel there's not much of an issue there besides the fact that it is on the track, but it's not moving fast enough. But the good news for us is it's on the track. But what if this moves and then we do not have the infrastructure? We are not really, nobody's thinking about the infrastructure. And this is where we feel we need to put our focus into. So there was a lot of discussions and debate. And we also talked briefly about the post-2015 healthcare agenda, which was agreed last year, September, with the ASEAN panel. So looking at the post-2015 ASEAN healthcare agenda and what we have today, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of homework we need to be doing with regards to on the healthcare sector. So just to wrap up, these are the points that aside from talent, we are also concerned about investments in this sector, the regulations within, the protectionist measures from each of the countries. Like what you mentioned earlier, are we looking at ourselves as Southeast Asia, or are we looking at ourselves as ASEAN nation? And if we are, then what is it we need to be doing in order for the surplus doctors in Malaysia to come to another ASEAN countries to practice and the surplus nurses to actually do that? So this is where we see the calling of a cross-border resource pool. How do we put our resources together we have within the ASEAN region to address this very dire need of healthcare issues? Because quite frankly, if you don't have healthy people, you are not going to be able to move forward with the ASEAN Economic Community agenda. After all, it is the people who drives economic of the country and of the region. So we have come in the end with a consensus that we will need to form some kind of a working group, an expert forum, for instance, who would meet regularly and really put forth on what are the fundamental infrastructure issues that needs to be addressed for other things to start moving smoothly and to further progress the healthcare agenda within the Southeast Asia region. So this is basically a brief recap of that.
Yes, thank you very much, Shanti. You touched on, among other things, on the movement of persons, professionals, and you would have noticed when the minister made his presentation, he identified 8 professions where they are doing these MRAs, the mutual recognition agreements. I've never for the life of me been able to find out why those 8, who chose those 8 professions. Of course, doctors are one of them, and dentists another, nurses another. So your healthcare has got quite a few out of 8, and then they have an agreement called the movement of national persons. Natural or national? Natural persons. There could be unnatural persons too, could move, I suppose. but I think this is something I think the ABC might be looking at next year on talent mobility, and the impediments to talent mobility, and beyond the 8 professions, because the needs of the different businesses are quite different. And usually talent mobility seems to go okay. If you're making an investment in another country, you can bring lock, stock, and barrel the people that they want. But there's something that we should look at perhaps next year, talent mobility. But your point about a talent pool, an ASEAN talent pool, I think in talent mobility, the view is that it's a global pool. Because people move across, the globe now. But it's obviously something that we should follow up on. Thank you very much. And finally, perhaps Billy will be reporting to us on infrastructure, which is big time, big issue. So Billy, what happened?
Thank you, Chairman. As the last man sitting, I'll make this very quick. First, let me set the scene by defining what we think infrastructure should mean. I think it means a few things. It means sustaining the environment. That's the first thing. And the second thing is making people's life a lot better. And the third thing, of course, is enhancing or elevating the economy. So in short, it's making ASEAN and the world a better place to live. In a nutshell, that's what infrastructure is about. And what is infrastructure projects all about? I mean, we hear infrastructure projects, we hear their airports, their seaports, their roads, their rails, their water supply, drainage pipes, all very uninteresting things that doesn't seem really to affect you. But it affects every one of us because these projects make our lives so much more comfortable, especially in ASEAN. And because these projects are very complex, they are very large, and they take a very long time to realize and to complete, it crosses a lot of issues. The first thing is we talk a lot about land acquisition. One of the biggest problems to infrastructure works is land acquisition and easement of land. As you know, infrastructure works consume a lot of natural assets. The second thing is frequently nations give differing signals about their policies with regards to what infrastructure facilities they want to implement. It depends on who is in office, I use the word. And because of these contradicting messages sometimes, investors' confidence is threatened. Particularly because infrastructure projects take so long to realize, a guy who's investing or a company or a fund who is investing will need confidence for a longer horizon because he's going to put his money over many years. And the last thing is, although we talk about infrastructure all the time, we are very short of people who actually understand infrastructure, who has the capability and even the capacity, enough of people in ASEAN who can execute infrastructure works. The company I work for is an American company, but we have a big presence in Asia doing infrastructure works. And the technology and the human talent that we bring over does support the development of infrastructure in ASEAN. So because of all this, we decided to go into lessons learned. The overriding data that we need to know is that there are billions of dollars required to be pumped into infrastructure facilities from now until the year 2020. Why 2020, I do not know, but that was the sort of a time frame to say that ASEAN needs to really accelerate infrastructure spending. And it has been studied and researched that the average nation needs to spend 6 to 8% of the GDP on infrastructure commitment. But at the moment, the record is they're spending less than half of it. Why? Again, because the processes are complex, are not refined. The financial market is not very confident after the Asian financial crisis. We do not have enough people to really manage the process. And also, because infrastructure work is so vast and so complex, it runs into a situation whereby you need to work with intergovernment agencies and even international agencies. So we decided to take a few things from the experience that we have noticed over the last so many years. We look at some of the funds, infrastructure funds that were doing well. The reason we talk about the money is because there is a big gap between demand of infrastructure facilities and the financing of infrastructure facilities. The paradox or the irony is not that because there's no money, there's plenty of money, as you guys know, in the system, just that the money is not getting through to financing these facilities. So there's this gap, and this gap is ever widening. And one of the things is that we look at some funds that are doing well, some instruments that are doing well, There's a Singapore company called Clifford Investment. It's not a fund. It is a joint venture or a partnership between the Temasek company in Singapore and a few banks, and they did very well. But they have a mandate, a remit, to only fund companies who are based in Singapore. Not Singapore companies, but companies who are based in Singapore. You can be a Vietnamese company, but you're based in Singapore, you're entitled to be under that remit. Secondly, there's a fund in China and Asia who did very well, who committed billions of dollars within a short span of 5 years. And I was very amazed how they can do that, putting out so much money into the market in such a short time. And they did very well. And of course, we look at one particular alternative that we implemented in India, whereby there is a total partnership between the Indian government and the agencies, the banks, and even the pension funds that are available in the country. So we took away all these lessons learned, but we decided to focus on the positive ones, because the negative ones we all know. And we're going to compile this, and the ERIA is going to submit this to the connectivity panel, and hoping that they will, touch the right strings. I think in all, I will sum it for my panel and the people in the audience, is that if we dare to dream it, I think we can do it in ASEAN. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Billy Ong. I'd like now to give an opportunity to members of the audience who might want to make any additional comments or to ask any particular questions of the panel. Please feel free to ask your questions. Just identify yourself so that we know how to place you. Anyone, please?
I think you all know me by now. Billy, the question of infrastructure, and I guess everybody here, the infrastructure was mentioned numerous times. What we find, we do a lot of work with entrepreneurs in Malaysia, but whether you're borrowing 10,000 ringgit from mum for whatever your idea is for business, or you're looking for an angel investor for a couple of 100,000, or you're looking for CIMB to fund, or you're looking for PPA from government to the private equity market, we find the same gap. The people on the project promoter side, if you like, don't understand the language of the finance guys. They don't know how to put the projects in such a way that makes it fundable. They don't know what CIMB needs. They don't know what a private equity party needs. They don't know what an angel needs. And most of the work we do with entrepreneurs is, what do you want? And understand what the financier wants to hear. And it's very simple. How much do you want? What are you going to do with it? How do I know what you're going to do with it is going to work? Who are you, so that we know that you have some credibility? How am I going to get my money back? What is my return? And how is my capital guaranteed? And whether it's, as I said, 1,000 ringgit from mum, or 100 million for a US, for a PPA, it's the same question. But nobody seems to understand that. Now, I'm guessing that that's what people have found. What do you think we can do to enhance the education of the project people? And this is all the way, as I said, from the garage inventor to the public service. I mean, the public service is staffed by people without expertise in finance or project in most cases. How can we build the education of that so that projects get structured in a fundable way? So all this money we know is here gets to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. So I'm sure it's easier to take money from my mother or yours, except that mine doesn't have enough money to do that. But I visited the World Bank, the GIF, just 3 days ago, and the conversation we spoke, exactly where you were trying to tell us, is that there's so much money in the system, but there are so few bankable projects. And that is the threat that we have in Asia. I think Datuk here will have more insights to this. The bankable projects is a problem. It is not well structured financially. It's not well structured in terms of feasibility. And a guy who's assessing it will have a big headache. So what do we do? I personally have 3 views. Firstly is we talk about the PPP centers. We have all these PPP centers. And Philippines is a good example. Datuk, about good PPP centers. But there again, we have a lot of interference from government policies, government processes. It frustrates some of the private enterprises. Secondly, you're right. it is not enough practice and therefore not enough experience. Unless there's enough PPP projects or infrastructure projects that's out there in the market, we will never have enough capabilities to fulfill the requirement. And the last thing, I really think that, we saw the chart where the minister put the Singapore is the top in providing infrastructure facility, and we shouldn't be learning the curve again. We should have good lessons learned from countries that have done it well and countries that are not doing so well, but they have other aspects they've done well. And I think if in ASEAN we can learn from each other, I think that will accelerate the process. So perhaps, Dato', you could comment also on the financial aspect of these bankable projects.
No, I think to be fair, there's also sometimes, lack of ability to communicate on the part of the bankers as well. Yeah, they also need to improve. But what I would say is, I think there's also a reluctance, too much of a reluctance in this part of the world to actually get professional advisors, right? People either don't like to pay or don't trust or whatever. But certainly in terms of knowledge and experience, there's a vast amount in the region. If you look at the kind of infra that we've actually financed in Malaysia, the structures that have been used, whether conventional, whether Islamic, the knowledge base is all there. Yeah, so, maybe, those would be my two areas that I would focus on, the communication between the two sides, and also, get comfortable. I mean, sometimes, to do a project properly, you've got to pay some fees. Yeah. To CIMB, preferably.
Any further questions? Comment? Okay, forum fatigue has set in. I think what remains to be said in respect of this particular session is, first of all, to thank the panel chairman and the people who participated in the panels for their work, and also, of course, the research partners for starting the discussions, I think, at each of the panel sessions. What will next happen is that in August, we will finalize the reports, these 6 reports. The ASEAN economic ministers meet in August, and we want to finalize these reports before they meet, so that then we can have some traction, with economic ministers as we try to push the ideas in these reports. So for your information, that's what we plan to do, to finalize reports, have them out in August. Now, secondly, I'd like to reiterate that the post-2015, AEC agenda is very important as well, and we want to be in at the start. I'm having a consultation on the 11th of June. Those interested can get in touch with Chari. At the same time, I managed to get some agreement that the draft that they have can be circulated among the council members and of the ABC, so that there'll be some idea what and where they're headed, and so this will form the basis of their thoughts about what we want to put in the post 2015 AEC, and this is a very important exercise. I hope everyone who is interested will indicate and try to come to Penang on the 11th of June, so that we can begin the process. So other than that,
why is it in Penang, Mane?
Actually,
apart from the fact that you're from Penang.
Why not? No, actually, what's happened is the ASEAN Business Advisory Council is actually incorporated in Malaysia. So we have to have an annual general meeting, and that's why we're having this annual general meeting. And why in Penang still remains, because the members of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council said, why don't we have it in Penang? So being the host, I have to have it in Penang, and so we'll have it at Rasa Sayang. Because I thought we have it at Rasa Sayang, perhaps then the ABC members might come, If we had it at a Chinese hotel in Penang, they might not turn up, But anyway, that's that. But I think let me wind up again by expressing my thanks and to everyone here also for being present at the final session. But we have the closing remarks to come from the chairman of the forum for 2015. Please. Do you want us to get down or wait here?
I think you can get down.
You want us to get down? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tan Sri Munir and esteemed panelists for joining us today for the very lively discussion. Definitely lots to ponder on as we move closer towards ASEAN integration.